What is going on, everybody? Will here with From Screen to Shelf, and I'm here with Chase. And if you
What is
can't
up?
tell by our background today, in today's episode, folks, in today's very special review, we are entering the video store, folks. That's right.
Oh, let's
We're
go.
entering Arrow Video's Empire of Screams box set. And we recently got the chance to, this past weekend, check out all these films. I actually picked this up on the Barnes & Noble sale. Shout out to Barnes & Noble for that 50% off sale.
Same.
This is one of the titles I was unable to find initially, but I found it in stock at a store about 40 minutes away from me. I don't know about you, Chase, but I ended up snagging this over the weekend. So
Yep. I think
super
I
excited
got
to
it the
talk
day
about it
before
with
you,
you.
maybe. Yeah, I know I got it off the same
think so.
exact sale. But
Yeah, so-
fortunately for me, I didn't have to go 40 minutes. But yeah, super
Yeah.
stoked because I thought it was gone forever.
Yeah.
This thing was sold out to preface that, and to preface it, we aren't really gonna be doing an unboxing, but we can kind of showcase it and showcase the art. It is really cool. This is probably the way that you've seen it online quite a bit, but it can sit on your shelf normally. We'll probably showcase the art. We don't have the collector's editions that came with like the little prints and the little
this
booklet.
isn't the limited. We have the
Yeah.
standard, right? Standard
Yep.
box set here. So
So
yeah, I
not
think
too
it
much
came
to
with
show.
art cards as well, right, Chase?
Yeah.
I think the limited edition. I don't know if there was posters in there or not, but it definitely came with art cards and the informational booklet. But I don't mind having the standard for this because
Me
we
either.
talked about this the other day. This is one of those collections where, like the Jallo Essentials collections, like stuff like this, I'm totally happy to just have the discs, like we have here.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure. I'm assuming this is slightly smaller in size, right, than the limited edition. So I'm not necessarily complaining because, in our last podcast we were talking about collecting mentality and all that, and we touched on space and how that's a growing concern,
Yeah.
as,
So
as
it's
we go
nice.
down this road.
Especially
So
they're
yeah,
super
it's nice.
thin.
Yeah, that's what I like about it too. If we want to touch on that real quick and showcase that, I mean, these are super thin, which is great for a box set like this. So
Yeah, and I prefer it because, like you said, shelf space.
mm,
It's thinner than Lost Picture Show,
it is.
which I know is a rough example because that's 10 movies versus 5, but still.
Right.
So let's
let's
dive
get right into it, dude.
to Dungeon Master. I'm stoked to talk about this one. I had a good time with it. How'd you feel?
Well, I liked it. Also known as Rage War. So I didn't watch.
Yeah.
What are there like? There's like 3 cuts of this on the disc.
Yeah, the pre-release
I
cut
ended
known as Rage War.
Yeah, that's the one that I
Theatrical and
watched.
international.
Yeah, I watched the pre-release cut. So what's interesting about this movie, I mean, the one thing that I thought was intriguing, at least initially, was the fact that this has like 7 directors. It's
Yeah.
got, like, I mean, I'm just looking at IMDb just to run through a few. It's David Allen, Charles Band, and John Carl Buchler, I believe, or Buchler. Not sure how that's pronounced, but we should touch on Charles Band for a moment because we were actually talking about this when we did our when we watched the last feature together.
Yeah.
So Charles Band, I guess, was involved with Empire Pictures. So
Mhm.
this set, it's titled Empire of Screams because it's mostly Empire releases, which all of these films are, to my knowledge. And Charles Band, he's kind of like, I guess we can say he's a B movie connoisseur, so to speak.
Mhm.
And after Empire, kind of moved on and I'm assuming produced and directed B movies throughout the 90s, but now he's actually one of the guys behind Full Moon Features.
Yep.
So Charles Band, he's been in the exploitation / B movie genre for what appears to be most of his career. So, and he's somebody that I didn't necessarily know much about, but as I went through this set, seeing his name pop up repeatedly, I had to dig a little deeper into him. So, it seems like he was had a heavy hand in a lot of these movies, which is interesting because we'll talk about the casting on some of these films too once we get into it. Because you notice with these kind of movies, if it's the same producers, they tend to shuffle the cast around, at least the
Mhm.
supporting cast.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, Dungeon Master, I had fun with it. It's like I guess we could say it's almost like a not
Anthology.
necessarily like a sword and sorcery movie, but it's
Yeah.
kind of like a self-contained anthology, which I thought was cool. Each director
Yeah.
directed, I guess you can say, a sequence in the movie. I forget the main character's name, but his fiance or his girlfriend essentially gets kidnapped and sucked into this realm that he has to go in and rescue her. And he essentially has to complete all these challenges. And there's an antagonist. I don't remember it's like the wizard. There's like
It's
a
like
wizard
Bird
in the film.
something.
Yeah, he's like a sorcerer. And he's like this evil sorcerer that the protagonist has to defeat in order to save his girl. So that's essentially the gist of the movie.
Mastema.
Um, Mistema?
Yeah.
Mistema. Okay.
But
And I
yeah.
guess Paul is I'm just researching the cast here. Yeah, so Jeffrey Byron played Paul, who's the
Mm,
main character. He's the guy who ends up having to go into this realm and save his girlfriend Gwen from all these I don't know, what does he fight? He fights like this giant rock monster. He fights like there's like I don't know if they're elves or whatever they are, like
yeah.
trolls. There's a few different things that he ends up having to go up against. But he's almost like a what would you call him? He's like a programmer, I guess we can say,
Yeah, he's a computer programmer.
computer programmer. And he's got this when he gets sucked into this other realm, he's got this pad on his arm that's essentially his guide. I forget what the computer's name is. I think it's Cal or something like that. And the computer is essentially his means of defeating um the foes that he ends up being pitted up against. So Dungeon Master overall, I mean, this was okay. I mean, I gave it like
Kind of
two and a half
fun.
stars, but I still appreciated it.
Yeah.
Um, the effects were what they were. Some of them were a little wonky, but I liked some of the sequences better than others. That's what I was gonna say because as a whole, it was okay. It was still enjoyable. There were moments that gave me some laughs, and I appreciated some of like the creature effects and stuff like that they did. And then there's probably some stop motion in this as well, which is cool. So
Yeah,
yeah, for the
especially with the
first
giant
feature, I mean,
totems.
yeah, I mean, it didn't blow me away, but I tended to enjoy the films as I progressed through the set more and more. So we'll
Yeah,
get into that.
from front to
But
back.
that's pretty much what I got to say about Dungeon Master, aka Rage War. So, any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I personally I'm a huge sword and sandals type of lad.
Mm,
Watching the old school Conans that are getting released soon, thankfully.
mhm,
That was one of my first movies I ever remember watching. I grew up with those, so like Swords and Sandals, Swords and Fantasy, like The Sorceress, Death Stalker, stuff like that. I love these types of movies.
mm,
I liked it a little bit more than you, not by much, but just a solid 6 out of 10, 3 out of 5.
yeah, yeah,
Just a little bit more. It was serviceable. It was fun. It was really cool to see all the challenges. I think that was a really good way to handle it by having different directors handle each challenge in an anthology style with a linear story. So
mhm,
I found it really, really fun. But I agree with you. Outside of our next title that we talk about, I think the next one is the weakest one in this set,
mhm,
personally.
mhm.
But I'll segue us into Dolls, which that's gonna look like this, but it's probably more famously known because I recognized this cover, and this is actually by Stuart Gordon, famously known
Mhm.
for Reanimator from
Yeah, that's the
Beyond.
classic artwork right there that Chase just showed us.
Yeah. So that
But
one's really cool. Cool effects, boring story.
I
I
I
mean, a
like
decent
Dolls
story.
more than Dungeon Master. So I think I
Really?
like Dolls yeah, I think I enjoyed it overall more than you did. I mean, I really enjoyed the effects in this film. I mean, as you
Yeah.
said, I think they're really the whole selling point. But yeah, I mean, ultimately, I was still a little underwhelmed. I don't know why. I think I maybe just expected more, because it was Stuart Gordon. I saw the name and I said, okay, well, this has got to be,
Gotta
somewhat
be fun.
enjoyable. But
Yeah.
God, man, and I mean, I think you posted a letterbox review. I didn't, but I think I saw that you might have because I remember seeing your log and I didn't get to read the review, but it looks like you did a review. So I wanted you to touch on that because I thought the characters were just
Insufferable.
it's yeah, it's just dude, I
Yeah.
could not sit through this movie, like, and
Again.
I made it,
Yeah.
but I had to really force myself to, like, sit through
Agreed.
some of the scenes of dialogue because I could not stand anybody in this movie. Even the little girl was okay.
Yeah.
Um,
It was like overacting, like an SNL
yeah,
skit style. You know what I
yeah,
mean? Like, that's
and
kinda how it felt.
well, there was some touches of, like, comedy in there, and I guess you could say I don't wanna say, like, a sense of, like, self-awareness, but it almost seemed that way, but it was
Yeah.
weird, like, it's almost like it wasn't sure which way it wanted to go in
No,
my
I
mind.
agree. And it had a
Um,
cool plot. I would compare this for people that are curious for a comparison, Puppet Master, which again,
yeah,
Charles Band, that's what he's famously most that has to be his most well-established franchise. There's like 13, 14 of those movies.
mhm,
Um, so this is damn near Puppet Master.
yeah,
If not a better comparison would be another Charles Band movie, Demonic Toys.
mhm,
But like you said, the practical effects, like whenever it shows like it's almost Chucky-esque as the Chucky
yeah,
series progresses, he gets more organic on the inside. So like
mhm,
these dolls have like this organic matter to them. Then the effects on that were awesome. Really, really
mhm,
well done. But every time a character talked, man.
yeah.
Every time, except for the old couple. The
I was
people
just
that are
gonna
like the
say,
owners of the house. They're good.
yeah, I think they're called the Hartwicks. I don't remember their first names, but they're the Hartwicks. They own the house, and
Yeah.
the husband is the supposed, like, doll maker, so to speak. Um, they were yeah, they were tolerable, and as I said, the little girl, she was tolerable. And so the guy that's left at the end of the film with her, who shows up with the other 2 chicks, I don't know his name.
Yeah.
He was annoying.
Yeah.
I just didn't care, and and this girl's little parents, the little girl's parents are awful. They're
Awful. They
they're
pissed me off
terrible
every time they
people.
talked.
It's
Yeah.
just annoyed and, like, more so than just, okay, I know I'm supposed to hate these characters, like, no, I actually just can't stand just seeing them on screen.
Yeah.
It was just bad.
Agreed.
Um, but the effects were great. I mean, the stop motion in this stop motion's a recurring theme in a lot of these movies. It was utilized a lot, and I do wanna give that credit because I do think that's the one redeeming quality of Dolls, and there's some moments
Mhm.
that were pretty creepy, and it had some atmospheric moments in there as well, so I appreciated that. I mean, that's really, what helped me get through the movie. I mean, the stop motion was cool. Every time the dolls came to life, it was fun to watch, so I appreciated that, and it had some, a little bit of blood and gore in here as well, so not too much, but yeah, overall, I mean, I gave this a 2.5 out of 5, but I enjoyed it more so than Dungeon Master, and I almost think it was more engaging for me because I hated the characters so much that I actually
You
wanted
were
to
hate watching?
I just it just became like a self-fulfilling prophecy, or it's just like I just hating this movie so much, I'm just going to watch it to the end just to get through it,
Yeah.
and hopefully I can feel redeemed at the end, watching these characters die because I did not care about any single person in this movie. But yes, kudos
I
to
gave it a
the
less than
effects
you.
team and the stop motion.
I gave it a 4 out of 10, 2 out of 5.
Mm,
I did not
okay, so
like
yes,
this movie.
you enjoyed, Dungeon Master a little more then.
Yeah, and it's a genre I really have a lot of appreciation for and like a lot,
Right.
you know? So
Yeah.
that's but I mean, this next one though,
Mhm.
ooh, so good. So good, so
Y
original.
Yeah, this is the first one that I really liked, because I was like after Dolls, I was like, "All right, there's gotta be some redeeming, I'm hoping, like,
Mhm.
there's 3 movies left, and, uh, I'm hoping we get some kind of, satisfaction from the next 3 films, but yeah, the next one is Cellar Dweller. Now Cellar Dweller was directed by John Carl Buchler, I believe, who also directed a sequence in the first film,
Yeah.
Dungeon Master. Now, a little bit about him, he was actually an effects guy as well. So I believe he might have been involved with Reanimator and From Beyond. I'm pretty sure he did special
Yeah, he
effects
was.
or special effects makeup on those features. So Again, close ties with Stuart Gordon, which is pretty cool, and I think he also did some stuff on Friday the 13th, which is cool, and as recently as films like Hatchet, which Hatchet's not so recent, but getting into the mid to late 2000s there, in terms of what he's done. But yeah, Cellar Dweller was cool, dude. I really enjoyed it. I like the comic book storyline. Big fan of Jeff Combs, so it was fun to see him kind of introduce us to the movie.
The
It
world.
was fun to start the movie. Yeah, you get us and introduced to that world. And essentially what happens is that I don't know what he is. He's like he's a comic book creator, I guess we'll call him that, who, like, there's like a tragic accident that happens. His comic book comes to life, and what happens is there's decades pass. And then this woman, I think her name is Whitney, and I forget who plays her.
She's pretty familiar, but
Yeah, I've
yeah.
seen her before. Deborah Ferrantino is her name. Deborah Ferrantino plays Whitney, who's like a comic book artist. So she ends up showing up to the residence or wherever it is that the uh, his workshop, so to speak, is located, and she starts illustrating a similar comic to what he was doing, decades ago. And what happens in this movie is the comic book essentially comes to life, or it serves as kind of a gateway, or a I guess we can call it, it's a means of summoning this demon or this beast that comes to life, and I guess we could say devours, or kills the people that you illustrate in the comic book, which I thought was cool. That whole thing was a super neat way to introduce that. So I appreciated that. I thought it was much more intriguing in terms of that setup, and that the execution, so much more than the stories of Dolls and Dungeon Master. So I really enjoyed this one. Ended up
Yeah.
giving it a 3 out of 5. The effects I thought were awesome, more
Great.
so than Dolls. Not as much stop motion. They had a lot more creature effects, like the guy in the demon suit. That looked really cool. Some good like special effects scenes with like fire when he's burning and stuff like that. I thought that was really well done. And some of the kills in this were much better. If we're not that we're using that as a metric, but that's right up my alley. So yeah, I had fun with this one.
Yeah, Cellar Dweller. It felt really original. Not so much into them now as I used to be, but comic books they're like a childhood staple. That was the very first thing I ever collected from like 4 years old. Used to always go to the comic book store whenever you could go for $1 and find like 10 comic books and last me the week, So like seeing something that's not like superhero, you know what I mean? And comic book inspired. That's not just somebody beating up aliens and this and that, but because I mean, you really can't say much about outside of that without it being the pivotal plot point. But it's very rewarding. This one in particular, I would definitely recommend. The transfer looked awesome. I will say that this one, outside of, we'll get into some of the later ones. This one definitely is probably the second best looking transfer on here. It's very crisp, very clean. Honestly, at some points you could have. It's a 2K restoration from I want to say the inner positive is the information I have. 35 millimeter inner positive, and usually those are really hard to work with to get great transfer quality. So I'm just absolutely appeased that I have this one on my shelf. It's not going to be something like Dolls that I might check out Dolls again, see if I like it more, but this one's going to be a rewatch. This disc is going to get used. I liked it a lot. The score was good. The atmosphere was good. The camaraderie of the cast, everybody was solid. I gave it a 4 out of 5 and 8 out of 10. Thought it was really good, and I'm pretty sure that'll grow on me even more as time goes on. But yeah, what you said, practical effects, creature design, immaculate.
Yeah, this one's definitely going to get I'm going to rewatch Dolls as well, and we talked about that before. I'll definitely give it another chance.
Yeah.
Dungeon Master, I mean, if I ever do like again, like you said, Sword and Sandal, or like, fantasy film kind of, marathon at some point, I'll throw that in there. Maybe that'll end up in the rotation. But Dolls will definitely get another viewing. Cellar Dweller for sure is going to be on my list. I gave it 3 out of 5, but yeah, it's definitely worth a rewatch. So I'm happy to have that in the collection as well. I want you to introduce the next feature because you were really excited about this. I know you were kind of hyping it up for me, and it took me a little while to get into it, but once it
Really?
got going, like I actually really enjoyed it. Yeah, I really enjoyed
Yeah.
it. So
I actually
go
didn't
right ahead.
go in order like you did. I was looking at the individual box arts for that I've been showing up here, and I got
Yeah.
to this, and I was like, "Say less," and I didn't even look at Robot Jocks,
Yeah.
and I threw it in, and then
Yeah.
on the inside it says "Man versus Monster." I was like, "Let's go!" So to kind of
Yeah.
summarize this is, I don't know, like both of these are kind of like, I don't want it to sound like too high of regards, but if you took like plot points out of Rocky and you took plot points out of the Karate Kid,
Yeah.
this is that meets an intergalactic alien fight organization, not organization, but ring, right? Where
Yeah.
humans haven't won, I believe it was in over 50 years. So this
Yeah.
one guy, he's known as a really good boxer slash fighter. He's kind of seen doing his thing around like this little space station, and he gets recruited to be the next champion. They're like, well, you should just enter the fight, and he ends up being really good. And yeah, this one was just so fun. This one, it's Paul Satter, who really wasn't in much. I tried to find other movies he was in, but he was in Creepshow
Mm.
too.
He's
And
the
yeah,
actor that plays the main and protagonist,
Armstrong.
right? The guy
Yeah,
yeah. Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. Armstrong. I remember his last name is Armstrong because they announced it a few times.
Yeah, it's and who it was writer Danny Bilson and Paul DeMeo, which
Hmm.
really, 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 really solid cast. This wasn't, yeah, I forget who
I like the
exactly
cast.
did
I mean, there's
who
two
was the
like fine
director.
looking women in this movie. Sherry, I think her name is Sherry Shattuck, who she was in the Steven Seagal. I don't know. I remember her from the fucking Steven Seagal movie Deadly Ground, but she did a lot of work in like I don't know. She starred in a lot of '80s movies.
Yeah,
She's like
she's awesome.
she's the woman that he kind of has this lust after. Like he's kind of
Yeah,
lusting after her, and she ends up kind of, well, I don't want to give away any spoilers, but she ends up being somewhat deceiving. Um,
yeah,
but I thought she was gorgeous. She did a really good job, though. I mean, really well. I think her performance was solid. And then whoever the coach is, I think her name is Quinn, and I forget the actress's name, but I think she was like a swimsuit model or something like that, 80s swimsuit model. Claudia Christian, she was really good.
Peter
Uh,
Manoogian was the director.
Peter Manoogian. Okay.
I don't know why I couldn't find that. It's not on the box art.
Yeah, again, I like the creature effects. They also had
They're
some really
solid.
cool special makeup, special effects makeup in this. It was kind of like heavily, again, heavy Star Wars influence with this, which I was
Yeah, with the
willing
design
to
and
give
everything for sure.
with a
Yeah,
lot of the designs. Yeah, especially some of the creatures that we encounter, like when he's kind of just walking around, like they're on a colony, right? It's kind of like a colony on a space station, from
yeah,
what I remember. Because they showed
pretty
like
much.
shots
Yeah.
of like the space station like moving like through space. So yeah, I'm assuming they're unless it's, I forget what the situation is with the humans, but it's like you said, they haven't won in, what'd you say, hundreds of years or something like that, or
It was
like
like
half a
50
century.
years. Yeah, because the former champion is alive and kicking. He's one of
Mm,
the people that approaches him in this movie, which
yeah.
it's I wouldn't say it's generic. This is, I think, an idea that could definitely, I don't usually, I'm always for original ideas, right? But I
Hmm.
think a new coat of paint, somebody picking this up, showing this some proper love, it being a little bit more gritty and less campy. I don't
Yeah.
think it was too campy, but a good modern remake of this movie could really hit home. I really do think so. It's got
Yeah.
a
It has
really
the
good
potential
idea.
for that. Yeah.
Yeah, especially if you had more fights, you know what I mean? Or I think there's already 5 rounds in this movie. So if you're curious, like, no, this isn't one of those movies where the plot point is dragged out to the end or whatever. It gives you what you want pretty much within a little bit, you know?
Hmm.
So yeah, I gave this movie another 4 out of 5, 8 out of 10. Had a really good time. The sound mixing, the punches, everything like that was very solid. The special features I actually did check out on it. I listened to a little bit of the audio commentary. Not too insightful with what I listened to, but it was cool to still listen to nonetheless.
Yeah. Yeah, I liked it. I ended up giving it a 3 out of 5 on
Oh yeah.
Letterboxd. Again, transfer quality. This is probably I would probably rank this in there with either Dolls or Dungeon Master. I'm not sure if Dolls looked a little better than Dungeon Master, and I'd
Yeah.
say this is somewhere in the same realm as it, like between Dungeon Master and Dolls. There were some scenes that looked
It's
a
very
little more
bright.
grainy than others. Yeah, well, that's the other thing. There were scenes that were really bright, and you could really see that grain. Like that grain really came through. And again, I like grain, but there was moments where there was some very heavy grain in there.
To
Um,
preface with that, because it does tell you
yeah,
when you press play. I believe this is the one where they could only use the theatrical print. They
yeah,
did
they only
not get
had
the
access.
original print. Yeah.
Exactly, they only had access to that. So again, as far as the source
Yeah.
material, they're pretty much doing the best with what they were given.
And it
So
I honestly
yeah,
could have fooled
I want to
me.
be a little more forgiving.
Yeah. It could have fooled me, so I wanted to shout that out. Yeah, the theatrical print, like, they would put in the film reels and stuff like that for people that just
Mhm,
want us to elaborate a little bit more and would show in the theaters, they had to get a hold of that. I believe it even says on that details that it's considered lost.
mhm.
So, Vinegar Syndrome, if you can get a hold of that, because I know lost is your favorite term. So, if you can
There
get a
you
hold of
go.
that somehow, maybe Vinegar Syndrome's sitting on it somewhere with all the
Maybe,
film reels
dude.
they like to buy. But this next one, I know you and I had an amazing time, but you had a great time with it.
I love this movie. I was kind of like, okay, because this is the one I think you would mention that people were kind of touting as the best film in the set,
Yeah.
consensus wise. And I got to agree, man. And that is Robot Jocks from 1989. We should mention most of these movies, like the span of these movies are probably from like mid to late 80s. I think
Yeah.
the earliest one was actually Dungeon Master. I think that might have been like 84 or 85. And then the rest of these are like late 90s. So
Yeah.
Arena and Robot Jocks are both 1989 from what I remember. So, pretty much the end of the era or the decade, we should say. But dude, Robot Jocks is pretty much the movie. This is the movie that Guillermo del Toro rented as a child and got the idea for Pacific Rim. Okay,
Easily.
there's no way you can watch this movie and not think of that.
Yep.
Yeah, I think it takes place after World War III. I believe from what I remember, and like we were in the chat while we were watching this, so it was hard to hear some of the dialogue at some scenes because we were kind
Yeah.
of joking and having fun and shooting the shit. So,
Yeah.
it made it for a more enjoyable watch, I will say. But I'm pretty sure from what I remember, it takes place after World War III. War has been banned um, across the world. And
Mhm.
instead of that, essentially like there's these different territories, or I guess you can say, well, whatever superpowers are existing, they essentially battle for control of whatever territories are up for grabs. And rather than going to war with one another, they have these giant robots, and the robots essentially represent the so-called superpowers, and they essentially duke it out for control of the territories. And I think
Mhm.
in the movie they're fighting over the state of Alaska, which I thought was kind of funny because it's like
Population of
Alaska of all
1.
places.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean, it's essentially revolves the whole movie revolves around our antagonist and his fight for, I guess, Alaska, for,
Yeah.
lack of a better way to describe it. The only thing that I didn't like about this movie was it was that one scene where there's a scene where they're fighting. The 2 robots are fighting, and you'll know exactly what I'm talking about because we couldn't help but call this out when we saw it. And there's spectators. They're standing, like, right there. Like, there's no apparent
Yeah.
separation or any, just complete lack of awareness in the
Yeah.
world of the film for the safety of the spectators. And there's
Yeah.
some kind of accident where one of the robots goes down and ends up it's actually a pretty violent scene. Like, I remember,
Very violent.
like, saying to you guys, like, "Holy shit, dude, like,
The amount of
what the hell
gore.
is going on here?"
Yeah.
Came out of nowhere, came out of left field, and all these spectators end up getting, like, killed and, like, brutally injured.
Yeah.
So that sets the course for the rest of the movie. But I mean, dude, this movie is fun, man. I had a really good
Yeah.
time with this. The only
Really good.
my only negative takeaways were that scene in particular, and then I want more robots, dude. I wanted a
Yeah.
little more fighting. I felt that there was some
Even
scenes
just
in
one more
between that they
match.
yeah, like, the pacing was slightly off, but other than that, dude, I mean, it was mostly enjoyable, man.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know who the actor is that plays the lead guy, the guy that pilots, the giant the mech that represents the forces of good in the movie, whatever we wanna call them. I don't know if it's ever mentioned.
Oh, you shouted
Um,
out this is a to pique people's interest even more. This is Stuart Gordon.
yeah, this is Stuart Gordon as well, which took me by surprise.
Yeah. You're talking about Achilles? That is Gary Graham.
Gary Graham played Achilles, and then Anne Marie Johnson played Athena,
Mhm.
who, kinda looks like, she kinda looks like Zendaya, but
Yeah.
I kept calling her 1989 Zendaya, but because she
Yeah.
just had a slight resemblance.
Yeah.
Uh, but, yeah, dude, I had fun with this, man. I think this movie out of all the films in this set, not only does it have the best transfer,
Yeah.
I think in terms of the overall production quality, everything from the set design to the costumes. I mean, some of the costumes were a little cheesy, I'll be completely honest, but overall, dude, I mean, this seems like it's the movie that had the biggest budget.
Yeah.
And
10
what
mil.
they were able to do with the stop motion effects with the robots and those fight scenes where you have arms being ripped off and, pieces flying everywhere, you have smoke and
Mhm.
fire. I mean, that was all incredibly well done. Now, there's some moments where if you were to pause it or, like, slow it down and you see some of the smoke or the flames, you can tell that they're models, right? Like, you can
Yeah.
tell that the smoke and fire isn't necessarily to scale. But, I mean, dude, that didn't get in the way of me having a good time with this, so
Yeah.
I really like this movie, man. Apparently, there's a sequel. I don't know if you wanna shout that out. I think
Yeah,
you guys,
spiritual successor.
yeah, what
Robot
is it
Wars.
called?
I actually
Robot
watched
Wars
it.
or something?
Yeah, I fell asleep to it
W
last night and finished it this morning.
Okay, what'd you think of that? Was that worth
It's
the
it's serviceable. It's a lot
yeah,
cleaner looking.
okay,
It's the turn of the '90s, I believe it's 3, 4 years after, and it's
right,
not the exact same, but in essence, it is 2.0.
yeah,
It does have the guy that plays Achilles, I believe, in it as well, but the different character
okay,
because I don't
okay,
think they had the rights to it, but
mm,
yeah, pretty much it's 2.0. The the fights were a lot cleaner looking. I don't think
mhm,
this one was as forgotten, but it wasn't that good. I mean, you
yeah,
can skip it honestly, unless you're just curious. It's really just for the fights. It wasn't like Robot Jocks where the in between was interesting. You know what I mean? As
right, right,
goofy at points as Robot Jocks could have been, Robot Wars didn't have like a solid foundation going on in
yeah,
between. If it
yeah,
had been the same characters, I probably would have cared a lot more. But
yeah,
that wasn't necessarily the case. So, yeah, that one's
yeah.
an easy skip. But did you say your rating for Robot Jocks yet?
I gave it 3.5, but, I mean, dude, if I could, I'd give it like a 3.7 out of 5, right? Like,
Yeah, yeah,
almost a 4 for me.
yeah,
To be honest, it kind of varies between like 3.5 and 4 star. I mean, I can't give it
yeah,
3.7 on Letterboxd, but if I could,
yeah,
that's what I would give it. Because I mean, I almost wanted to give it a 4, but I'm like, yeah, you know what, overall, because like, I can have as much fun with a movie, but, like, when I come back to it critically, that tends to be where my rating falls. So I gave it 3.5, dude. This is the best movie in the set for me. Still a lot of fun,
yeah,
dude. Very enjoyable. I mean, I got to watch it with you, so
yeah.
that's
It
an
was really
extra
fun.
half star right there
It's always
because
fun,
we
man. We
we
goof
had
on
a
it.
good time, dude. We had a good
It's
time
so
with
fun.
Robot Jocks. I would
Yeah,
highly recommend. I mean, so let's put it this way, if we're gonna recommend this set to people,
yeah.
thumbs up or thumbs down, I'm giving it a thumbs up
Oh,
because
easy
I
thumbs
think
up. Yeah,
Robot Jocks and Cellar Dweller, for me personally, I think those 2 are my
yeah,
favorites. I like Arena. Arena's probably a 3rd,
yeah.
like 3rd on that list. And then I would probably do Dolls and then Dungeon Master. But, you know,
Okay,
Robot Jocks
yeah.
is definitely on the rewatch list. I'm gonna have fun watching that.
Yeah, I kinda
Um,
wanted to shout out on a little bit of a tangent how to approach this. Like,
yeah,
if you have a crowd of people that are remotely into, like, these types of things, even if they're not, I would kinda embrace the video store aspect of this and watch it with people because it's, like just like you said, Will, like, watching it with you and then shout out for
mm,
Exian who's probably checking out this review. It was just so fun, you know what I mean?
yeah,
Even if you're just curious, a lot of these movies are out of print. So right now you can get it for 49.99 on the Barnes& and Noble sale right now, if your local one does have it available, because I think we were still lucky, even on the standard, to still get this, because I
yeah,
know it's not super easy to get a hold of. But yeah, just think about going to Hollywood Video, Blockbuster, whatever place you had nearby you, and then being with your friends and being like, oh, this looks goofy, renting it, going home, and then riff tracksing all over the movie, right?
Yeah.
That's not in the sense that like they're bad and to like make fun of them. If you find them bad, by all means, do what you want. But were just elevated with that experience, and I think whenever it comes to this, I will give this a solid, like, not even just a thumbs up. I'm gonna give it a solid 8 out of 10 as a complete package. It has a good amount of bonus features. Robot Jocks has that entire, what was it, like 20 minutes on how they did the models and scales and everything for the special features, which
Yeah, I
was
was
super
watching that
cool.
too. It's actually really insightful. Again, if you're into bonus features, guys, and behind the scenes stuff, all of these discs, I believe, have bonus features and at
Something.
least some
Yeah.
some behind the scenes content. But
Yeah.
yeah, for a movie like Robot Jocks, I really enjoyed that because I mean, that's the other thing. What you described it perfectly though. It's like going into a video store.
Mhm.
You're gonna rent some movies that some of them are gonna be kind of meh.
Yeah.
Some of them are gonna be okay, they're solid, and some of them you're gonna have a blast with. And, despite what anybody thinks about these in particular, everybody's gonna have different opinions. Obviously, it's subjective.
Yep.
I got that with this set. I kinda like that, the first 2 films, like, again, and this is subjective, this is my opinion,
Yep.
strictly my opinion. I kinda like that I enjoyed the films more as I moved through the set. So,
Yeah.
I was happy to end it on a high note, with
Yeah.
Robot Jock. I think it was much more rewarding to kinda have a bit of a mixed bag in there. And I mean, dude, for 50% off, I mean, at least right now with that
Steal.
Barnes& and Noble sale,
$10 each.
it's 49.99 before tax. You're paying a few bucks in tax. That's around a little over $10 per movie. So that's a steal in my opinion, dude. So,
Just like getting them from
yeah,
the bargain
definitely
bin.
worth it.
Yeah,
Exactly.
and some of these are
Exactly.
massively out of print, like Robot Jocks has been out of
Yeah.
print since 2015,
Yeah.
and I don't even wanna mention how much it sells for on eBay because that's not a good reference point, but, I mean, if you're trying to get just that movie, your best bet is to get the box set, right?
Yeah.
But, yeah, strong recommendation. I did wanna shout out that, my gosh, I hope they put out a second one. Like, I don't want this to be a one and done ordeal. You know what I mean? I want them to keep doing this.
Yeah, I mean, in Arrow, they've become so good at this with these box sets. They really do knock these out of the park, regardless of whether you or not you're gonna enjoy every film in the set. Like something like this, it's still completely worth it.
Yep, agreed.
But yeah, I'm hoping we see more like this. So, and we should shout out to Empire of Screams. I believe the reason why they titled that is because these are Empire Pictures releases,
Yep,
from back in the 80s. So it's kind of a tribute to the films that were put out by Empire back in the day. So yeah, it'd be fun to see some future releases of sets like this, which are kind of curated to represent specific production companies. I think that'd be kind of a neat thing if if this is the first of more to come, then I'm super excited for what else they have in store. So yeah,
agreed.
highly recommend this for anybody out there that's interested.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, so high recommendation, high praise. Like Will said, this is purely subjective on how we feel. Will and I
Yeah.
tend to agree whenever it comes to like kind of how these are. I enjoyed Arena a little bit more, but I definitely think it gets stronger as it goes on. But even then, there's somebody
Yeah.
I was talking to in the server that absolutely loves dolls, and that's amazing. I love that. That's cool. I can see why you like it, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, absolutely. And with that, Will is going to close us out with our thank you message.
Yeah, guys, thanks again for tuning in. We appreciate it. If you guys are interested in this, check it out on the Barnes and Noble website. If for whatever reason you can't find it on Barnes and Noble, I'm pretty sure Arrow has copies available. So check it out on Arrow's official website. Check it out on Diabolic. Check it out on check it out on Orbit DVD. I'm sure there are standard copies left. I don't know if the
Yeah,
LE has anything left. I mean, you might be able to find it on eBay, but you're going to pay whatever they're asking for. So, be aware of that. But yeah, I think we both really enjoyed this. Thanks again for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this content, please remember, like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. So every time we drop a video like this, you guys can be alerted. We appreciate everybody tuning in, and we will see you guys soon. Thank you.